Welcome to our live audience. We are so excited that you are here. The team at Simply Sarah and I are just delighted with all the different pieces, how they're working together, and the fact that you are all sharing these conversations with other people because they're impacting your life. I so appreciate all the feedback that we've gotten. And today we have a super special guest. Her name is Melanie Torres. I had the gift of meeting her probably about 4 years ago. She lights up a room, and you'll have to listen in quietly, carefully, because she has so much to share, and she is so good with words that I find after conversations with her for days afterwards, I'm thinking about how she's woven words together in order for me to really understand the depth of what she's talking about. The other thing about Melanie that I really appreciate is that she listens so amazingly. So yes, I could go on and on about her, but I'm going to bring her in. Melanie, I'm super excited that you are here. Thank you so much for saying yes to come and be on the Simply Sarah show. Just welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. I knew as soon as I had been asked to have the show that I wanted to have you come and share some of your wisdom, because what you have to share, I just find to be so important and life-changing. And that because you are an expert in relationships and how the dynamics of those kinds of things work together, whether they are work relationships or romantic relationships, or casual, friend kind of relationships, you just have so much to share. So how did you get to where you are today, friend?
Well, the short story is trying to fit into places that relationships weren't just flourishing, and having to learn the hard and painful way where it was that I did belong, and how to foster and cultivate those relationships that weren't like playground relationships, right? Like, it's kind of, as adults, we continue that pattern of, oh, you're in the same vicinity as me, I see you all the time, so we must need to be friends, or we must need to have like a close relationship, which is not always the case. And that was the hard lesson that I had to learn.
I think with that, Melanie, also, I love that playground idea, because we do have people who are in the same vicinity, and not all of the people who are in our vicinity, whether at work or other places, are necessarily safe relationships for us, nor are they enriching our lives. What I have been really coming to recently has been, in 5 years, will this make a difference? And I think that that's been part of my own internal conversation about the safety of relationships, in terms of how empowering they happen to be as well. So what are some of the things, and that was your short answer, but in that process, what are some of the things that you learned that helped you move out of these people are in my vicinity, therefore I need to start processing if they are really great relationships for me or not? And what are the tips and tools that you learned in that as you began then to move into an area of, these are relationships that are worthy of my energy and worth fostering?
Yes, there was a lot of questions and conversations to have with myself. And the conversation shifted. It first started with, what is wrong with me? What am I not doing? What do I have to do more? And in that energy of lack, basically, or that I was coming up short, that I wasn't enough. And then it started to be like, well, even when I'm with this person doesn't even make me feel good. I still don't feel good enough to, have a conversation, or I'm not like in their sphere of influence or of interest. And really just having to sit with that discomfort of, I don't necessarily like this person and the way that they make me feel, but why is it that I that I want to project myself onto them, force myself onto them, force myself into spaces that I don't fit in, that don't welcome me, that aren't safe. And having to, and really it's just sitting with those feelings that are really uncomfortable. And having to have those hard conversations of, well, why do I keep doing that? Same, different person, but same problem, right? Different name, same issue. Different face, same conversations.
Yes.
And not until I started therapy. And so that helped a lot with just bringing things to the surface where I wasn't having my like internal conversations anymore and running around in a circle of like, this is just a cyclical thing. Like,
Right.
and I keep coming up with the same answer, but it's the definition of insanity. Yeah. And so bringing somebody professionally safe, because I also didn't really know what safe was. That was a word that didn't register. I didn't know what that definition of the word was. I didn't know that word even existed, other than physical safety. But there is so much more than just physical safety that is important as well. And so it started with those conversations with myself, and then bringing somebody professional in and just like, I want to fix this problem. And so that's really where it started, where I guess the blinders came off, right? I wasn't like tunnel visioned into you're the person that I like see every day and you must be my friend.
Right. I remember coming out of a very, very difficult relationship, and one where I had trusted on so many different levels, and asking actually for blinders to be on so that I could see my way through and not have distractions from anything else, because I understood that there was a clarity inside of that where I needed to be focused on learning to listen internally and learning to trust that I could be safe with myself. And I think that has been something that has, at different times, and recently I have been wondering if I should be asking again that question. I've been having this internal conversation for myself about, is this a space and time for me to ask for those blinders, to go back on again, to not have distractions around, but to really be focusing in on some pieces. The internal conversation is very different, but still coming to that place of, what does it look like to really focus in on one particular thing in order for wholeness, which we call healing, to be present in. And so I love how you talked, Melanie, about that there are different levels or types of safety, not just physical safety. Can you share or elaborate on that a bit more, please?
Yes. So physical safety is so much easier because there's physical pain that we feel. Somebody either hit us, pushed us, something, right? So there's this physical like activity that we sense. When it comes to emotional safety, it's harder to pinpoint that because it's our internal feelings and the way that we feel and perceive and our lived experience is different than someone else, and their threshold and their tolerance for certain activities or certain emotions, it's going to be different than ours. And it's so much, it's easy to fall into that comparison of like, well, that person lived through that and don't talk about it. They may not talk about it to you.
Right.
They may not talk about it to the circle of friends that you exist in. And that comparison is just it robs us. It robs us of safety, but it robs us of goodness, of joy. It robs us of so much. And because there's no like pinpointed, like, oh, they hit me here or they did this to my body part, we essentially convince ourselves of it wasn't that big of a deal because I can't actually pinpoint what happened.
Melanie, for me, there's also a sense of needing outside confirmation that it hurt. And this isn't all the time, but there was something that happened at work yesterday, and I couldn't wait to finally sit down with my love and share how just all the different emotions that it made me feel. But I was also aware in that conversation that I was in a space of almost internally, I was gauging. Am I asking for confirmation that this is really awful, something that I've worked so hard for and have devoted so much attention to, and that is something that is citywide? Is it important for me to have somebody else say, ooh, or was it enough for me to experience it and to be aware that I was feeling all those emotions, and then at the end of the day be sharing it with somebody else of this is what happened today? And I found that in my internal conversation was so different as I looked and considered those two different things. And in the end, when I was sharing it, was this happened today, and then the tears began to flow. And I'm not somebody who typically cries about things that happen at work. I live, in some ways, have lived a pretty defined life in terms of if I need to do things at work, then I go into work and I do those things there. And yes, I do bring some of the things home, but I have really found in my life a separation between those two things to be really, really healthy for my family life. So as you are thinking through and processing this, is there we talked about having these hard conversations with yourself and listening internally. Did you find that there were points where it was easier to sit and have these internal conversations than at other times? Or did you find that having out conversations where you were speaking with somebody else to be really a path forward for you as you began to look at these relationships that weren't bringing you joy and goodness and health and encouragement, nor were they asking you to share and expand who you are?
So in the beginning, it was, I don't want to say easier, but it helped to have an outside, unbiased voice to tell me, like, oh, that's valid. Because this was also the first time that I've ever attached emotions and memories together. So I was very disconnected and disassociated from feelings and emotions. And so for her to tell me that's valid, there are reasons why you do that, was helpful and necessary, because I needed to get out of that, like, woe is me, I can't get out of this rut mentality. And so then there are moments where God is just, sit down. we're gonna have a conversation, just you and I. And those beginning moments of that nudging is a little, there's a little apprehension and just, ooh, what's gonna come up? But at the end of those conversations, I find myself swimming in so much freedom. But I didn't really need that, and I didn't really need to hear that from someone else. It was just that truth comes out and it expresses itself within my body, within my soul, within my spirit. And it's like, thank you.
Yes. We're going to get a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to have more with Melanie.
Hey everyone, this is Araya McGarry. I'm the host of Get Celebritized with Araya McGarry, right here Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Limelight Network, right here on E360 TV.
We've been on a SIA and been telling everyone about it since about 5 months ago. Right away, my body experienced a mini detox. I experienced full, deep nights of sleep till this day. Hair growth even you might never before, as well as physical stamina.
I can testify to that. I use my brain a lot, and I've noticed an increase in mental clarity and mental stamina.
That's so true. And our skin feels the healthiest it's ever been, guys. And to be honest with you, we do feel younger, and we're getting so many compliments. So I'm happy to chat with anyone who wants to learn more about a SIA. Feel free to book a 30-minute call with me. See you soon.
We are having an incredible conversation with Melanie Torres, and I'm actually going to bring her right back in because we have so much more to share. And Melanie, I'm going to go ahead and put your Instagram up so that people can follow you and get more information from you also. And her website is exactly the same as her Instagram. It's with Melanie Torres. And so you can reach out to her either way. Melanie, we've been talking about these pieces of finding safety within ourselves, essentially, and trusting ourselves, and then beginning to find friends, people around, or maybe seeking them out who are like-minded, who are encouraging, who are, at least for the moment, walking life with us, right? And so how did you, after you discovered that people in your vicinity, people on the playground, didn't have to be your besties, they weren't necessarily feeding life into you, they weren't necessarily wanting the best for you, they just happened to be in the vicinity, how did you then begin seeking out and finding people who you could have heart-to-heart conversations with?
Yes, that's also a learning curve. My richest friendships right now, we've been friends over a decade. I first met them at college. And most college friendships are one of those, like, you meet them, it was great for 4 years, maybe you stay in touch for another 2-3 years, especially if you're not in the same vicinity, right? And so I went to school in South Carolina, grew up in California, and so it was just a melting pot. Everybody was from everywhere. And two of my richest friends right now, I would have never thought that we would have stayed friends. We became friends. I was a senior and she was a freshman. And she lived in Pennsylvania. And fast forward, she actually ended up marrying somebody from California. And so they visited every other year because his family was there. And it just fit. But a lot of our friendships are just on the phone and having to make that effort. Another friend of mine, she's from Brazil, and we don't talk as often. We've just learned that our friendship is really great. Every 6 months, we're just on the phone for about 6 hours and catching up from the last 6 months that we haven't, talked or met each other or, talked and catch up. But letting go of what it's supposed to look like and not forcing it into, well, I can't see them every day, or I can't see them for coffee. And we've talked, we've talked about it where it's, man, I just wish I could come over and like sit on your couch and just cry.
Right.
Because they are that safe person, but they are also the safe people that in the middle of the night, I can call them, leave them a voice note of me crying, and in the morning they'll get back to me. And so being open to how to meet different people and letting go of what it's supposed to look like.
That is so, so rich. I love that idea of letting go of what it's supposed to look like. Because the books that we read as children, or the books that are read to us, talk very, very much about vicinity. And they show pictures that also show people in the vicinity. I also think that technology has been a gift for us in some ways, in terms of being able to use technology to be able to keep closer in some ways. But growing up overseas, the way that we did it was writing letters, and you could feel how the person, what they were expressing, but yes, the words they used, but also their handwriting, if they drew little pictures or doodled or that kind of thing along the side. And so the communication, yes, our throat chakra, that area of energy is definitely about giving and receiving information. But it's also the space of being able to communicate in all the different ways that we are able to, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. And I also have friends who live across the country, and we don't touch base super often. But yet when we do, there's this beautiful volume of catching up. But all of it is just so encouraging for each other. And as you were sharing about people that you can call in the middle of the night and leave hard messages with, one of the things that really came to me as you were sharing that was, in my current, where I am right now, I have noticed that some people have been super willing to celebrate the changes that are happening in my life. The Simply Sarah show being one of those things. And that other people have been very, very quiet and kind of reflective. And that all of the different responses are exactly their responses. It doesn't mean that I'm doing something great or not. It doesn't mean that I'm on the wrong track or the right track. It means that they are having their own human experience with information that I'm sharing with them. And I love that you have people in your life. I think that's so important, to have people who can listen when we've had a day that's not so good. But I also have more recently been listening to something that my friend Beth Meisner said years ago, co-founder of BNI International. And she talked about friendships being people who can also do the celebration of life with you, who can put their own agenda for you aside and celebrate the pieces of where you happen to find yourself in that particular moment with that. So do you find it's important then to be with people for the holidays, or are you, is it important for you to be in person with friends for holidays? Or do you find that there are other things that are more important for you as people come into the holiday season?
So for me, and I can actually speak to this from experience because I recently moved to Texas from California, stayed here in Texas for Thanksgiving and Christmas, didn't go home. And I realized that if I'm with just heart, soul centered, connected people, and I feel seen and I don't have to hide myself, I belong there.
Yes.
And so again, it's that letting go of, it doesn't look like family. I don't have my nieces and nephews that I can corral into a hug.
Right.
But these people, their hearts are so expansive that I feel like I'm seen and hugged.
Yes. And I love that you can share that from your own personal experience. I think that's such a powerful piece. I know of a family that has for years gotten together every single month to celebrate everybody's birthday. And a key person in that whole tribe transitioned unexpectedly.
Mm.
For them, that finding the way back to, do we still continue to do this? Because that one person was really the hub to make sure that all the pieces fit together and they made it work, right? And so I think that I know for my extended family that my mom is that person that, we get together once a year, or she will get a huge Airbnb or multiple cabins in the woods or whatever it happens to be, right? And she and my dad started this when he was still living as well, about pulling the tribe together, everybody there. And there have been conversations at different points about, she is the hub that makes this happen, and that people really do it, make efforts to show up. But will that be something that we will continue, or will it look different? Will we do something much more on perhaps the same dates, but maybe use Zoom or do a different platform that potentially would be a way of us, coming together and meeting in that space? But as you look back and think about the different things, you and I have talked about trauma and grief, and at different points, what are some of your things that you have found that have been very, very helpful for you as you have walked through loss, no matter what that happens to look like? Yes, you moved to South Carolina. Yes, you've moved to Texas. And inherently, inside of moves are going to come, even though we plan for them and we want them to happen, whether you're moving across the city or changing churches or changing, where the gym, whatever the change happens to be, even when we seek it and want it, there can definitely be these pieces of grief and loss. What are some of the tools that you have found that have been helpful for you?
One of the biggest ones, scientifically speaking, it is 90 seconds for a feeling and an emotion to be validated. So if I just feel whatever's coming up for 90 seconds, I'm like, I can do it. A minute and a half, we can do this. And then let it pass, let it process, let it be for 90 seconds, and then go about my day or just lay in bed. But to validate, self-validate, internally validate those emotions, it no longer feels, because there is this, the old life, the new thing that you're stepping into feels like baggage. Because if you don't validate those 90 seconds, it only takes 90 seconds. Because then you feel like you're pulling along this thing that you're like trying to hide, but it's not going anywhere. So that has been one of the biggest things. Journaling, doodling. Sometimes journaling doesn't look like complete sentences.
Right.
Sometimes they're words, and sometimes they're just scribbles that my hands, my body, like that's where it wants to express. And so I let it. Another practice that I have, and these are different ones because in different seasons, just they work better than others. One that I found when I was in a transitional season, I didn't have my own space to journal or to doodle. I would walk, but in my walking, I would actually have my voice note out. And so I would just record and just speak. Sometimes it was a prayer. Sometimes it was me processing out loud. Sometimes I did go back to listen. Sometimes I didn't. It just needed to, again, needed to release, be expressed. And that's one of the biggest things, is allowing yourself to feel that emotion, to let it be, and not to qualify or quantify or even attach meaning to it, because feelings aren't facts.
Right.
They're just communicators of, we feel badly, can we cry? We feel really good, can we jump up and down? If we just allow them to be, then they're not stuck within us, and we don't feel like we're plugged up. And so that movement of energy, of flow, of whatever needs to pass through is a lot more free flowing, because we're in that practice of 90 seconds. I can give myself 90 seconds.
Yes. And I really appreciate you speaking to the 90 seconds. And I also know that our brain remembers things, not with the fact that Aunt Matilda was in all those memories. It has nothing to do with people. It has everything to do with how we felt inside of that. And so you may have other pictures of things float through during that 90 seconds. And after the 90 seconds of feeling that emotion, it cannot be sustained at that particular level. We can verbalize and keep going back to it, and we can attach it to our story if we want to, but we don't have to. We are not the pain and the suffering. Our internal being, the eternal being that we are, does not have pain and suffering attached to it. We are spirit beings, I believe, having a human experience, and part of this human experience is going to be a whole bunch of different emotions that we're going to have in our life. And so as a teacher, one of the things is we were teaching young children to write. We would have them put in the center of the circle, like the center of a bagel, let's say, would be, the feeling or the word or whatever the topic was going to be about. And so if you are noticing that you're feeling a lot of different emotions that have to do with one particular one, you can go ahead, because our brain remembers it based on how we felt in that moment, to put it in the center of the circle, draw a larger circle around it, and then just begin to let your brain list all the other places and times that you have felt a similar way. I know that yesterday, one of the feelings that I felt was I felt like I was being shamed. And I don't know that that was the other person's intention. But I definitely in that moment was like, oh yeah, that's what this is feeling like for me internally. This feeling of feeling shame is coming forward in order for me to heal it. So any other times that I have felt shame, I just want those to all show up. Now, I happen to be in a place where I could easily do that. It wasn't, I wasn't front and center working on something. I had a moment to be able to do that. And so I found that to be a really helpful piece to feel, and then say, okay, any other emotions that want to come forward with this can also come forward with that as well. And I love how you talk about the jumping up and down when we feel joy. There's a concept that our bodies, if you think of our body like a tree, that the fruits of the spirit, the fruits of different emotions that we have, each of these emotions being a different fruit, are actually, we carry them like a tree, right? And so the place for joy is actually right here. And one of the reasons that we jump up and down is because we are moving that space of feeling joy. And the place that we feel peace is actually in our gut. And so that when we feel upset or concerned or anxious about something, often it will show up in the gut. We feel that. But also when we've been on a vacation out there for 4 days with nothing to do and feeling pretty lazy, our gut often feels really, really good. And that's that space for peace showing up for us as well. We're going to be right back. We're going to take one more commercial break. See you on the other side.
If you're looking for an author, speaker, and confidence coach who is passionate about helping entrepreneurs and leaders improve their presence and confidence so they can reach the success they desire faster, meet Vanessa Raymond.
I'm Vanessa Raymond. I am an author, a speaker, a multiple business owner, and a confidence coach. I come from a very physical background. A lot of the time, we feel like we have more control over our physical body than we do over our mental, emotional. So I like to come from the outside in.
Vanessa will help you achieve unstoppable confidence through the art of powerful posture, positive body language, and dynamic vocal image, which are tools to energetically and physically show up as the very best version of yourself so you can create meaningful relationships in business and in life.
If you are ready to elevate your game, sign up for your free consultation. Act it, feel it, be it.
For more information or to schedule a consultation, contact Vanessa at www.victoryfactor.com.
We are continuing our conversation with Melanie. We've been talking about understanding, coming to this realization that just because people are within our vicinity doesn't mean that we have to engage in deep relationships with them. Is it important to be polite and kind and to hold our own values as we come forward? Absolutely. But also this idea of being able to understand that there can be internal conversations that we have. And with this, for the entrepreneurs that are listening in, I just invite you to be listing out exactly who you want your clients to be. And as you put that list down of what they look like in terms of clients, maybe you're going to say something along the lines of that they pay on time. Maybe that's important to you. Maybe they are somebody who, if you give them homework or things to do between sessions, that they actually go and invest in that they're not just doing lip service. Perhaps on your list is going to be somebody who shares your name with other people. You want that positive conversation going out there where they are sharing your contact information. Whatever those pieces are, I really invite you to start a list and to be listing out those kinds of things. But I'm going to encourage you to actually make 2 different lists. The other list is the type of clients that you are repelling. And when you begin this list, please do not be surprised if clients begin canceling or not showing up, because you have made a stand on how you want your clientele to be. And if they are people who do exactly the opposite, they don't pay, they're not doing the things that you're asking them to do between sessions, they are talking behind your back, but not in a way that anybody would ever ask for your information. Whatever that happens to look like, I invite you to create both of these different lists. Sometimes for people, it's much easier to create the I don't want list, and then from there to be able to flip it to what you do want. But I really encourage you to have both of those lists so that you are being super, super clear about the people that you are bringing in, the people that you want to attract to who you are. I really believe, and I have been learning this lesson for several decades now, that who we are as individuals is who we are attracting. And that it's okay for people to not be attracted to us. There are reasons that people aren't, and that is really okay. And so as I'm bringing Melanie back in our conversation, Melanie, you've been sharing such deep concepts of tips about different ways of being able to process. I love the one about being able to go out for a walk and then to have your voice memo, so that you're just doing voice memos, and that perhaps you go back and listen to them, maybe looking for certain words or listening to see if there's levels of conversations that come through several different ones of them, but also that you are in that place essentially capturing how you were feeling in that time, and that you are not saying that 8 years from now that you're going to feel exactly the same way. I so love that. What are other things that you do to help you maintain all of the different parts of your life? Because I know you to be a very, very healthy person, and you don't, you're very gentle about how you take care of yourself, and you don't demand that other people do it for you. You're willing to bring your own breakfast if we're going to meet early in the morning and you're not sure if where we're going to meet up is going to have a good breakfast or something that you're really going to enjoy eating. And I adore that about you. And so what are some of the things that you have found just to help yourself take care of yourself?
Yes. These past probably 2 years have been a lot more hands-on and more intentional with health. I know everybody talks about like self-care practices and all of that stuff. I've changed my language with that, and now it's self-maintenance. This is how I maintain this level of energy, of mood, of output. And two of the big ones are acupuncture and chiropractic care. Those are two really big ones that I've realized are needed for me. I don't know what it may look like for other people. One that I'm looking for here in Texas is a hyperbaric chamber, because I did that when I was in California, and it's a different way of dropping into my body and really feel grounded and settled. Not to mention the influx of oxygen to everywhere. And really taken a deep dive with food. Like you mentioned, in the mornings I'll bring like overnight oats or something. But I've been experimenting with different foods, but it is also my creative outlet. And it's just something that like my tongue, my palate like lights up of like, ooh, what if we substitute this ingredient? And then it's like, oh my word, what if we also add this and do that? And so it's something that does bring me so much joy, but it also makes me feel good. So there's I'm a French fry person. I'm just not even gonna lie. But I've done like sweet potato fries. I've also used carrots as French fries. Yes, that has been a new thing. And even like, I'm also like a big carb person, but I've substituted grain-free flour. So like cassava flour, almond flour, tapioca, and have just really experimented. Probably not like perfect breads and perfect carbs, but it doesn't make me feel sick. And then I feel good about it. And just recently I've incorporated sweet potatoes puree in these pancakes. Yes. So there's foods that I know that are really good for me, like the sweet potato, like the avocado, and avocado can go on anything, anywhere. You can just give me that thing and I'll eat it.
Yes.
But sweet potato, I really do have to be more creative with what I can do with it and where to put it. So yeah, food is like a big one because I love food. It's what I share with people too. And we commune over food. And yeah, it's just, but allowing myself the opportunity to just take the time of, I really like this. What can we do to make it better, to make it agree more with my body and not feel like it's an inconvenience? Because that's the big piece. That's something that I really had to learn with just maintaining and then also feeling good about my body, is that my body is not an inconvenience. My body is needed. It is the container for how I live in this world, express, live out my purpose, and so that me time is not an inconvenience.
I think that that's just so powerful. Melanie, I have not done a hyperbaric chamber, and I would love for you to share more about that experience. I know that back in the day, I went through a season where I was just cold all of the time. It was summer, and I was done feeling cold. And so I went into I'm going to say it out loud, into a tanning booth, just because it was the one place that I could go that I could actually get my lizard time. I could actually get warm during that particular season of my life. And yes, I go see the dermatologist to make sure that I didn't, do bad things. But so that's my reference point when someone talks about going into a chamber. it's kind of a clamshell. You get in and then they kind of close it up and you enjoy the time, the little timer on. But this is a very, very different experience. I would love for you to share about that.
Yes. I'm going to give a little backstory because I think it's pretty cool. I suffer from eczema, autoimmune disease. And so I think I was like 10 years old or something, 10, 11, 12. And somebody at the church that I was attending was giving this like creation, like seminar and talking about the whole atmosphere and likened it to being in a hyperbaric chamber. And so then he started talking about the hyperbaric chamber and all of these people that were getting healed from it. And my little 10-year-old brain was like, I wonder if I find a hyperbaric chamber, how much is it? Like where would I find one? But at the end of that day, it kind of just, it was in my psyche and that was it. Well, last year, Christy introduced me to Grandma Linda, who has a hyperbaric chamber in her shop. And I mean, the whole world stopped. My voice is quivering right now. And I just thought, all those years ago, and completely forgot about it and wasn't even looking for a hyperbaric chamber. And there's two of them here. And so I ran, yes, I'll be in it. Just tell me what to do. But it is, I liken it to getting into like a pod. And yeah, if you're claustrophobic, you may just want to let the practitioner know that you'll need a little bit more time, or a little more hands-on check-ins. But you get in a pod, they seal you up. Because it's an influx of oxygen. That means the toxins that can't live actually get expelled. So there is this heat that expels from your body. And it can get warm-ish like a sauna in there, but it also just depends on the PSI that it's set on. So when you start, they'll set you on the lowest level and you'll probably be in there 15, 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, depending. And there's this little, like a kind of like if you were to scuba dive, that window that you can kind of peel out of. So it's not completely dark in there. But I deep breathe in there, probably like the first 5 minutes, I'm kind of like settling in, the oxygen is, filling up and getting regulated. And then I just fall asleep. And I come out of there kind of like in a daze of, where am I? What am I doing? Like, this feels really great. But I do, like, I fall asleep in there. Sometimes I have an emotional release as well. So that has happened.
And then as you are doing this self-maintenance, how often, when you find one of these, how often would you go in? Because I would think that the body has to then create more toxins that need to be released. So I think this is something that somebody would not do every day. So how often would you, in an ideal world?
So I probably went every 2 weeks, but that was because I do have an autoimmune disease and there are toxins inside me. But the hyperbaric chamber, a lot of the people who don't use it for maintenance actually use it for healing. So this woman actually had stories of people like, there was one man who his like retina was detached. And so he was I don't know how long he was in there, but they had bought one for his personal use. I think they did an hour or so. I don't know how long. I'm guessing it was more times in the week than just every 2 weeks. But his His retina basically healed, became attached again, like all of the things. So just night and day difference between when they first got the chamber and then him being healed. So it does depend on listening to your body too. I know there are moments where I just felt disassociated, and I was like, nope, it's time for the chamber because there's nothing else that's working. Acupuncture didn't work, chiropractor didn't work. The chamber is going to be for me. And it did. It just completely settled everything with all my cells in my body.
Incredible. As we are coming to a close of this particular conversation, Melanie, is there something that you want to reiterate, something that we have already talked about that you would like to make sure that the audience really leaves with?
Yes, there was one thing that I think you had followed up with other people's perceptions and their thoughts, right? Of whether they're able to celebrate you or not, whether they're able to hold space for you or not, or whatever that feedback may be. One of the most powerful things that I have to consistently remind myself in those levels of growth is what they think is actually none of my business.
That's powerful. Say that one again, please.
Right? What somebody else thinks is none of my business. And I tell my clients this all the time because since I am a dating coach, they're like, well, I don't know how he or they perceive me or, whatever. And the visual that I give them is, are you still in your own personal space and yard, or did you reach over the fence and are trying to grab something from them? And so that visualization of, is it mine or is it theirs? What am I trying to actually reach for? And is it actually rightfully mine?
And that comes back then to boundaries, but it also comes back to a concept that I was introduced to a couple years ago. Yes, we've all had conversations, I would think, with people who are what I would consider the word that's used as energy vampire, somebody who is stirring the pot, chaos. But I didn't see that they were doing it to be able to eat off of that energy. I see it very differently now. And so, but the opposite side of that, or the other part of that for me, is, am I doing what I need to for myself to take care of myself so that I don't need to go someplace or have an experience in order to feel good? Am I staying inside of my yard? And then if I am, that makes it easier for me to not be wondering what other people are thinking or wanting them to validate whatever it is that I'm talking about or doing. Allowing people the freedom to be able to have their own experiences. So I'd love for you to say it just one more time, Melanie, because it's just so good.
Yes. What they think is none of my business.
Wow. Well, with that, we are going to finish our conversation today, Melanie. Thank you so much for coming and taking the time in your very, very busy life in Texas. Maybe at some other time we'll have a conversation about what it looks like to move and all the emotions that can go along with that as well, because you've made several major ones and every single one has been the right one for you at that particular time. And so I celebrate that you are in Texas, that you have your place and that you were able to do your job literally from any place in the world. And super excited about that. And so, friends, we will be together again next week, Thursdays at 3 p.m. Pacific, and then 6 p.m. Eastern. Super excited that you are here and just so grateful for you.